So disengagement with groups, our responsibility, I think, to do something about. Yes, but I also think there's an issue about saying perhaps we ought to do more to help students understand that for success in learning, you have to regulate your own behaviour and regulate the behaviour of the group. So I think groups can regulate behaviour because groups can help each other in terms of supporting learning. So, you know, for example, I was talking to one of my student groups and there was a particularly dominant student and I said quietly, why do you always answer first? And she said, because I can't stand the silence when nobody answers the question. I said, well, if you wait, do you think somebody else might respond? No. Well, who's in charge of the classroom? The teacher, she said. Don't know whether that's true or not, but a good teacher, in my opinion, needs to be able to encourage students to talk. Yes, if you've got a dominant student constantly, you cannot win. You have to do, you're the dominant student, my dear, you have to shut it down. Yes? So part of the way in which you might encourage students to talk is to help the students that are noisier to wait and slow down and not be so in need of filling the silences. Yeah? One of the things that I sometimes do for engagement is literally, I call it my point and press exercise. Where's the register? Point and press, right? Okay, so I'd go, okay then, Sophie. Yeah, or Victoria. Victoria, what's your opinion on whatever? Yes? Now, most of my students know that I do this now. Yes, and they see this in their hand and they're going, here we go. What I will do is I'll say to them, I'll mark off that they've answered a question and they know they're off the hook then. So I've got one interaction and they've got, I've done it, yes? Now what you might get in that situation is, they lose concentration because they're off the hook, but because everybody else is on the hook, yeah, hopefully all of the energy is focused on you and the questioning, yeah? So that's what I would do. Interestingly, that came from a piece of research in secondary school education where there was a group of students and in the classroom they all had a orange stick with their name on in a tin, and the teacher was basically asked a question and then the student's name, the student was picked to answer the question by taking their name, you know, their orange stick out. Yes? Now, can you imagine how that might feel for a group of students for that to be happening? How might that feel? How do you think it might feel for students to be targeted in that way? Stressful. Yeah. Is that necessarily a problem?
Because they could be focused more on a hook and names not coming out next rather than the content of what's being delivered. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So if you're going to use this kind of technique, how should you use it?
With their permission, really, I think.
Fairly, in a timely way, in short bursts, so that you put it down so they're off the hook. But yes.
Ask them at the beginning of the session, have anybody got any objections to that as well?
They all say no, don't want to do that.
Then you
can't use it.
You do a different technique.
I'm not so sure about that, but I'm a bit... yeah, I'm with you. I understand where you're coming from in terms of asking permission.
Can I just say as well, when you do something like that, you can also get that rebellion again where they go, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when you put someone on the spot and they don't want to be, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So the skill there is in actually keying into and asking questions that allow a student to achieve. Yes? Phoning a friend, getting them to help each other, making it easy, allowing achievement to occur. Yeah? You're nearly there, but we're in this direction. So it's all of those skills that you have to practice in terms of saying, not saying you're wrong, not saying it's rubbish, yeah? Saying, Yeah, that's really useful. It's like, oh, she's not Hayley. Hayley answered a question earlier, yes? And she was way ahead of the game. And I had to say, hang there. Yes, I need this, not this. You're running. That kind of thing. So it's that kind of approach. And that's where I come from in terms of trying to help students consistently achieve when you're asking them to engage in conversation and answer questions when you're doing a question and answer session. And we do a lot of that in teaching, don't we? Yeah? I think there are other ways of doing question and answer. You can do it in quizzes, you can do it in small group work, you can get groups to work together to come up with answers. That allows the students to work to their strengths, so the ones that are happy to present information do so, but the rest of them have contributed. You can use Padlet, which is an anonymous way of getting students to contribute ideas, because they don't have to have you don't have to say anything, they just put it on a Padlet. You can use post-it notes and then collate them and bring them together, which is sort of what we've done here. So you get content from the room and you're not asking the quieter students that are struggling with it to deal with too much performance anxiety, which is a big deal in classrooms in my opinion. Yeah? Interestingly, in that research with the students, the school kids, one of the students was always answering the questions, always, the first one to answer. And they found, after a few weeks, that she stopped answering and they couldn't work out why using this technique. And she'd taken her orange stick out of the pot. And they investigated why, and the reason why was because she couldn't cope with the possibility of not being able to answer a question when targeted. Huge performance anxiety issue there, right? Which you would not wish to put any student through, in my opinion. They did actually work out some ways of dealing with it. And I think we don't attend to that enough. I've had practical sessions where the students have got to walk up to a Sim Man doll and say hello to it, and it's like the worst thing you could imagine. I can't believe I've got to do this really silly thing in my head. Yes? John, I bet in your situations with your PMVA, do you get students actually find it difficult to literally come up be the person that you've got to demonstrate the technique on?
Yeah, I mean, we have situations where students don't like being that close to each other when they're working in pairs. That's the other thing, and obviously they have to close down that distance to do any of the techniques.
Yeah.
So that can feel quite uncomfortable.
So I have to get over those kind of things, and we haven't got enough time to do the warm-up exercises that get them past that, because they've just got to deal with it. And then there's this attitude, you've got to handle this in practice, get over it now. But in practice, they're not doing this stuff in front of their peers. And peer pressure is huge.
In undergraduate physio, they made them strip their underwear in the first term of their degree to treat each other.
Wow.
Because that's what patients feel like.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I think it's horrendous at the beginning. By the third year, it's like, oh, it's just that lesson, that's what we do.
Well, there's an interesting technique.
And this was in Cardiff, I don't know if they do it in Sheffield, but I do know that it broke down those barriers very quickly because they were trying to help them appreciate what it feels like to be exposed like that.
Wow. Yeah. That's an interesting one to consider as a department or as a team, isn't it?